Happy Saturday, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another wonderful episode of the Girl What podcast. This is your girl, Reamey.
And this is the economical Esther, Jade.
And today we are going to be discussing the circle of life.
Yes, nobody wants to think about dying, but we really have to talk about what's happening here because grief is heavy, enough with confusion and bills and family drama on top of it. So on this episode of Girl What, we get into end of life planning with the folks who see it up close through estate planning, attorneys, death doulas, financial planners, insurance pros, funeral directors, hospice and social workers, plus people with lived experience who've had to figure it out in real time. So we're talking documents, money, decisions, and how to have the conversations with people so your loved ones are supported, not scrambling. So expect practical steps, honest lessons, and a respectful but real convo about protecting your legacy, your dignity, and your family's peace. So let's jump right into what's the teases.
Yeah.
All right.
What's the tease?
And it's nobody told us this part. So the unfiltered, unapologetic introduction to what death actually costs the living financially, legally, and emotionally. So on this sunny Saturday, wherever you are, the studio holds space for truth, tenderness, and somebody fix you a plate energy. Mm-hmm. We welcome Reamey, Belski, Carmen Price, Alexandra Ciferno, and Robin Frost. So first up, Reamey Belski owns Crossover Doula Services out of Richmond, Virginia, and she did not come to play. Before Reamey was holding space at the end of life, she showed up at hospital bedsides for survivors of sexual assault through the YWCA's hospital response team. She looked crisis dead in the face and said, "I got this." That calm she carries, her clients eat well because of it. She completed her end-of-life doula training through the Doula Givers Institute, works with a cremation company, yes ma'am, the whole journey, and pursued additional training as a dementia consultant through Teepa Snow's Positive Approach to Care model. And Crossover Doula Services launched in 2023, and Richmond has been better since for it. And this woman has visited over 25 countries. 25 countries. That's a lot. That's not even half my age. Between guiding people through life's biggest transitions, she collects passport stamps like the rest of us collect excuses not to travel. Next, we have Carmen Price, who is joining us on the line. She brings over 20 years as a hospice social worker to her work as an end-of-life doula. Carmen knows how families grieve, how families cope, and how families need real guidance when life turns sacred and complicated. She co-authored a powerful self-published book with her siblings called Cherishing Life Until the End, Memoirs of a Loving Mother's Journey Home, and she uses story as a tool for preparation and peace. She also keeps it real because Carmen already told me her intriguing fact it needs a minute to marinate. I respect a guest who chooses honesty over performance. Guess it runs in the family because she's Lo's aunt. Girl, what? And then we have Alexandra Ciferno, who is also joining us on the line. She's a registered nurse and director of operations of ACG Hospice, brings 15 years in emergency and critical care medicine. She knows how fast life can change and how clear you have to get when it counts. She now leads the Richmond branch of ACG Hospice, raising the bar in end-of-life care as the organization grows into a top provider in the area. And because Alexandria contains multitudes, she runs a full homestead operation inside a suburban HOA while raising 2 kids. Ooh, that's a lot, girl. You got a lot. Trust me, she holds compassion, leadership, and get it done energy in the same 2 hands. And rounding out this table, because every conversation about death, life, death, and everything in between eventually needs somebody who understands the legal side of what you leave behind. We welcome Robin Frost, Esquire, I love that word, founder and managing partner of Red Quill Law. Robin is a Richmond-based attorney who built her boutique law firm especially for the people the big firms overlook: small business owners, healthcare and mental health professionals, entrepreneurs, and nonprofits. She shows up with practical, relation-focused Let me stop and relationship focused legal advice that actually makes sense to people sitting across from her. Now here is where it gets good. Before Robin even stepped foot into a courtroom, she was teaching high school physics. Physics, sis. Like, come on, like from physics to law, right? Oh my goodness. Then she pivoted to working for a medical software company, earned a master's degree in physics from ODU, which is Old Dominion University for those who don't know, and a JD from the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. She approaches every legal problem like a scientist. She breaks it down, tests the assumptions, find what actually works in the real world. Robin founded Red Quill Law on one powerful belief that high quality legal guidance should be understandable and accessible to businesses and people doing the real work. She negotiates contracts, handles business formation and succession planning, and helps entrepreneurs fix legal problems before they become expensive life lessons. She is also the co-founder of Holistic Life Studios, a Richmond collaborative workspace designed to support therapists, wellness professionals, and service-based entrepreneurs. And she is currently learning the banjo because apparently one career reinvention is never enough. Look, we might have to jam because I play the ukulele just a little bit. So we got 4 women, 4 lanes, and y'all, and 1 table. And y'all, this conversation is about to be everything. So let's get into it. Girl, what?
All right, Lo. Ladies, thank you again so much for joining us. This is definitely a conversation that needs to be held. It's one that is uncomfortable for a lot of people, but again, it does need to be held. So I'm going to get it started. For this first question, anyone can jump in at any time.
And make sure you introduce yourself because we have people listening.
Yes. All right. So first, what led you into your current roles?
I can start with mine because someone needs to go first. So I'm Robin Frost, the lawyer in the room. So sorry, guys.
Yay.
So especially with specifically looking at estate planning stuff, I kind of found my way here because I work with so many small business owners and therapists specifically. So in working with people who they are their business and their business is them, what happens when you pass, right? So this is something that I kind of have this conversation about. And with therapists, they're ethically supposed to have a continuity of care plan. Mm-hmm. If you're a small solo therapist and something happens to you, what happens to your clients? They just show up at the door the next day, right? Yeah. They don't know. Right. They're waiting online and wondering where you are. So that was kind of what led me to get into estate planning and having those conversations with people more specifically.
Okay.
I'll go ahead. This is Reamey, and I was drawn to this work because I've always been very interested in showing up for folks who are in crisis situations, and that did start at the bedside with folks who were showing up at the hospital who had been survivors of sexual assault, and I was able to, just hold space for them and kind of help them through those next few hours, during their experience at the hospital, and I knew that, I was very comfortable with, truly just showing up for people who are in their worst day ever. Yeah. And I wanted to continue that work. And when I came across the term end of life doula, which happened to be on social media years ago, I was like, wait, what is this? And I did a lot of research and realized that that is a combination of some of my most strongest skills. All of the soft ones, all of the people focused conversations, it's really hard to explain exactly what I do, but I wanted to work with folks who were so uncomfortable in that moment, and they truly felt like they just needed somebody to take their hand and guide them through whatever was next, whether that was the next few hours, next few weeks, next few years. Gotcha. So I don't have a problem having really hard conversations with folks, and that's what I want to do, just because it's so needed in our culture. We don't prepare ourselves to talk about death and dying, and that's so hard. So I'm really happy I get to be here and make a difference for folks who are truly living those conversations now.
Indeed.
Carmen, would you like to let everyone know what led you into your current role?
Absolutely. I actually think it's a calling. When I was in grad school, I was placed at hospice. Before I started working there, I had no idea what hospice was, but it all felt so natural. And over time, I realized I was born for this. In our book, we talk about how we were taught about death and dying, We went to funerals when we were young, so it was very natural to us. And it was an easy transition. And I'm actually starting a doula business as well because my goal is to change the culture. I tell people the things we talk about that are absolute are death and taxes.
Yes.
Everybody talks about what I'm going to do when I get my taxes, but nobody talks about death. So that needs to change.
And last but not least, Alexandra, what led you into your current role?
Hi, yes, this is Alex. I'm a registered nurse, and I spent about 10 years at the bedside in between emergency departments as a nurse and in the trauma ICU. And I truly think that I was able to see from when a patient arrives to the hospital all the way through multiple units in the hospital, and then also I've treated them outside of the hospital. And so I think it was a natural progression to treat my patients at the end of their journey. And to be very, very transparent, I was really tired of seeing people kept alive in hospitals that should have gone home to peacefully pass on, that were tired and that were ready. And I was really ready to be on the other side of that conversation. I was ready to have the ability and the honor to take care of these people in their homes and provide them the care that they deserve.
Thank you. For Robin, let's start with a thing nobody wants to think about until it's too late, estate planning. Now, I've went through it, and I actually have a living trust and all of that wonderful stuff, and a will, and a letter of wishes.
Yeah.
But a lot of families operate on love and trust, assuming everybody will just figure it out when the time comes. And so what actually happens legally when someone dies without a will, and what does that look like for a family that's already grieving?
It's a mess more often than not, right? So someone who passes without a will or any estate planning, someone's coming in, they're looking at all your paperwork. They have to try and put together an estimate of what is your estate even worth before they can even show up to court. So they just have to, because they have to go into court and tell the court, like, oh, hi, I'm the trusted person who's going to take care of this to become the administrator of the estate. And to do that, you have to start off with an estimate of what is their estate worth. Okay, what does that include, right? I have to often still look up when I'm working on this with people. I'm like, oh, what do we include? What don't we include? And I work in this area. It's a good portion of my business. I do it often enough that we're having these conversations. So, someone's passed away, and to be able to move anything forward. So if someone passes without a will, without anybody on their bank accounts, things like that.
The POD.
Yep. Your bank accounts get locked. Bills aren't getting paid. People are running around and trying to figure out what was even yours to begin with, to show up to court, to be able to get into the things, to figure out how much you had, right? How much is in that bank account? I don't know, and so it just becomes this ongoing thing, and they have to often post a bond to be even appointed as your administrator. So people are coming out of pocket. They're trying to chase down all your heirs and get things signed up. And this is in the wake of whatever's happened. Right. Sometimes you have some preparation. You know that someone's, if you've been working with Reamey, you know something's coming. But, I mean, you're talking, we've got people on the line that are, they worked in emergency departments and ICUs, and it's not always something that's planned. So people are running around trying to gather documents and figure out who's in charge. And then often they're fighting too. What counts? Who's in charge? And you're just left kind of at the mercy of the law. Yeah. What's the thing? Were you married? Were you not married? Did you have a long-term partner who really should have gotten everything but didn't? Because the law is just going to go by what you have done. That's the standard. Are you married? Do you have kids? No? Okay, it's going to your parents. Whether or not you could have lived with someone for 50 years. Yeah. If you're not married, they may not see a cent.
Well, who is the ideal candidate for establishing a revocable trust?
Everybody. Revocable trusts are like the best kept secret, I think.
Y'all hear that? It's the best kept secret.
I think that because I
have a living trust.
Yeah. Revocable living trusts. They're often the same. They are a great tool. So you can actually get this revocable trust. You can title things in the name of the trust right out of the gate. You can put your house in the trust. It's yours. It goes under your social security number. You can revoke it. You can change your mind at any point. But if something happens to you, there's already somebody who's been appointed to run the trust, to pay the bills, to do the things under that trust. And it actually has some amazing tax consequences where if you do pass, there's all of these like step up tax advantages and things that people can apply. The people who inherit from you get to apply all of these things, so they get to have your estate essentially increases in value because you're not losing things to taxes and to all of these little things that happen. They also get instant access. So if your house is in the name of the trust, something happens, your kids are there, they can stay in the house, no problem. Yeah, that's hands down best kept. Best kept.
Well, we have a
secret, and
couple
it's
more
not public.
questions. We have one more follow-up question for you, and then a couple for the rest of the ladies. But we're going to cut to a commercial, and we'll ask when we come back. Welcome back to Girl What. We're going to do a continuation of What Does Teach Assist. We have one more question for Robin, and before we ask the other ladies some questions. So, at what point, Robin, in life should someone prioritize setting up a revocable trust?
I think the obvious answer to me is when you have kids. That is for sure, because you can set up who's going to take care of the money. So if you are, let's say you're a single parent, right? Maybe you and the other parent, maybe you're divorced, maybe we're never together, anything like that. You may not be able to control parental rights on one side, but you can control where your money goes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So if you're worried that the ex isn't going to let your kids see your parents, guess who becomes the trust fund?
The parent.
The person who's running that.
Yeah.
You send it to the parents, right? There's ways to make sure family stays
Reach
connected.
beyond the grave.
Yeah. You thought I was a miserable ex before. Now I'm dead and I'm still miserable. But there's like, when you have kids, you can also set up like, good, now my 18-year-old isn't going to get $1 million from my life insurance policy and go buy 3 cool cars, crash it, and be done. You can set when they get access to that money, what they get access to that money for, before turning it over to them. You ensure that your kids can stay in your house, right? That the house goes where it's supposed to. But honestly, anybody can benefit from a trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, you want to ask the next question to the ladies?
All right. So, Reamey and Carmen, and just as a reminder, those of our end-of-life doulas. Most people have never heard of the term end-of-life doula until they desperately need one. Could you break it down for our listeners? What does end-of-life care actually look like in practice, and at what point should a family start that conversation?
Absolutely. This is Reamey. I'll go first. And I think it's really important to note that all end-of-life doulas have a different scope of practice, so it kind of depends on what that person does. So I can only speak for myself. But I know that like what I kind of specialize in is the caregiver burnout that a lot of families are going through if they're caring for a loved one at home who's home on hospice or home with a life-limiting illness that's just a really long journey, and it could be years and years and years before they even could qualify for hospice. So I love to come alongside families when they've just kind of been in the thick of it for a long time, and providing extra emotional support, logistical guidance, helping them with a third set, like I'm an outside set of eyes, and I'm not emotionally attached to those individuals, and so I don't come in with the emotional, I'm not coming in with somebody who is also loving the person who is going through this process, who is dying. I'm not emotionally attached to the situation. So I think it's really important to have somebody like this where I can provide outside guidance, a perspective that they may not have seen before. I love helping people kind of unravel the tangle of what is next? What should I expect? Especially when it comes to like the final weeks of a loved one's life. We talk a lot about like the natural dying process. So like what your body's going through, what to expect. Here's how to kind of lean into that and support them in a really natural, holistic way. And I think that is just so important to feel like you have somebody, like a partner on the journey with you, and you're not trying to just figure it out alone. A lot of times when somebody's caring for a loved one, they could also feel very alone in that situation. Because say like your mom is passing, you're taking care of her at home, and you feel like maybe if there are other family members, and sometimes there's not, maybe they're not as emotionally present as you would like them to be. So there's tension between family members a lot at that point. So it can be so helpful to have somebody who just comes in and kind of is holding your hand and with you throughout this process.
Carmen, what does end-of-life care look like in practice, and at what point should a family start that conversation?
It is never too early to start end-of-life planning. End-of-life planning starts from completing advanced directives. I do have certification in that. That's the living will, healthcare power of attorney, all of the documents so your family will know exactly what those wishes are. None of us ever know when we're going to leave this earth, so I feel like those are things that we all should have in place now, so the families won't have to worry about what I would have wanted, or it alleviates some of the stress from people. One of the things that I also like to focus on is education about what to expect at the end of life. When I work for hospice, I journeyed with many families through that process, focusing on legacy work, because a lot of people want things that they want to be passed on to the family, whether it's a letter or a story or artwork, just to help families come to term or help patients come to term with what those things are so that they can pass on. And then the other thing, since it's so difficult for families to have conversations about death and dying, because many times people will try to talk to their children and the children might say, oh, I don't want to talk about that right now. One of the things that I also am open to doing is facilitating family meetings to help with some of those conversations.
Thank you. Alex, hospice carries a reputation in Black communities specifically. People think signing those papers mean giving up. What does hospice actually provide for a family, and what shifts when a family says yes to that support?
Yes, definitely. So what does hospice actually look for that family? What does it actually look like in practice?
Yes.
It's really a lot more than most people think. It's so much more than just morphine. You get a registered nurse, you have a certified nursing assistant coming in to your home to provide care for you there, along with a social worker, a chaplain, volunteers, and not to mention the financial help that it does bring you, because hospice pays for a lot of things that really cause most families a lot of struggles, such as incontinence supplies, equipment, some medications. And so it's really so much more than just comfort. I think that, like you stated, for the Black community, it is something that is kind of a hush-hush topic. And so I'm so glad that we're talking about it. I also find that a lot of people think that they have to either have their faith or their hospice. And the reality is that you can have both. And so one of the first things I do to break down that barrier when I meet a family is to ask them what is important to them. What are they looking for? I'm not here to tell them what I've got. I want to hear what they need, and then I tell them how I can help them. And so it's just so much more support. And then the support extends past the patient's death into bereavement, which for my company specifically is 13 months long, that we follow a patient's family after their passing for support.
Okay, really thank you. So, Carmen, you said you had a little bit of experience with funeral planning. One of the questions we wanted to ask was, what does funeral pre-planning actually look like? What does it cost? How does planning ahead protect a family from making the most expensive decisions of their lives while they are actively devastated?
Funeral pre-planning involves intention about what is important to that person who's having the funeral. And in the greatest situation, the person who is going to die is making the plan. They go to the funeral home and look at the different caskets. They talk to the funeral provider about what is absolutely necessary. Many people usually go in and just are looking at traditional funeral services. Funeral services can be as individual or unique as the person who's making that plan. So it's an opportunity just to go sit down, have a long conversation where you have time to think about, okay, do I really want this? Do I want to spend this kind of money? As opposed to after someone dies and everybody's grieving and in a panic and making some of the decisions to get the most expensive things because we really want this person to go out in style and we want to honor them. So it's just a great way to be intentional and to also have that opportunity to focus on the finances, because many times people will make decisions that are not necessarily within their budget. And when you go in, you don't necessarily have to pay upfront for the funeral planning. You sit down and talk with them, but there are administrative charges that will be added in when you make those final arrangements.
Thank you. We're going to make a nice little transition into the Love, Baby, and Other Grown Folks business.
And yes, we are. And this this subtitle is What We Owe Each Other. So we're just going to continue rolling through. For this area, it's just, the real talk about how death lands inside of relationships, parenting, and the beautiful, complicated business of being a grown woman holding everybody together. So we're going to start off again. This question is for everyone. So again, let's talk about the family dynamics that death exposes, because grief will absolutely reveal who people really are. What do you see happen in relationships, partnerships, sibling bonds, parent-child connections, things like that, when a family hasn't had the end-of-life conversation ahead of time? Robin's eyes just got so big, y'all.
Yeah. Alex, did you have something you wanted to say?
Sure, yeah, I can speak up on this. I deal with families 1,000% of the time, and one thing that I find when we don't have these conversations like we're having now, or have them either ahead of time or when they're prompted naturally, is that a lot of fears come to the surface. And what do people do when they're having fear, right? They lash out.
Yeah.
And so I think that as a hospice provider, me coming in and, having that conversation when we admit a patient to hospice is great, but the real conversation needs to happen so much before that, right? We need to express to our loved ones what our wishes are, because it takes away a lot of the fear of, am I doing the right thing? Or would mom want this? Would dad want this? And that just causes each sibling to have their own opinion, because they all have different relationships with their parents, right? And then all of a sudden, every opinion's brought to the surface. And it's almost like they're fighting each other because they are in crisis and they are in fear. And so if we lay them a roadmap before we get there, it really gives whoever is, advocating for us at the end of our life a roadmap, and it really gives them some stability.
Carmen, did you have something you wanted to say? I thought you were saying something.
I wasn't saying anything, but I can.
Okay.
It can certainly cause chaos. Like she said, there's a lot of fear, and everybody wants to make sure their opinion is being heard. And sometimes you have that big mama or granny who held the family together, and without that person, the relationships fall apart, if there really was a relationship. So that just underscores the importance of having those things. Even if it's not in paper, have those conversations so people will understand what your wishes are.
Yeah. Robin or Reamey?
Yeah, we definitely, this is something I talk about with my clients a lot, right? And I've seen it play out in my own family too. Like, I watched both of my parents deal with their parents passing and everything. And I think it's really interesting, because one of the things that I will do is, people talk, they're like, oh, well, when I pass away, I want both of my kids to be my executors. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's great. But yeah, because there's gonna be an issue. There's gonna be something. However many kids you have, take that, it's exponential how many issues there will be, right? And so I always make them kind of choose. I'm like, what you need to, who at the end of the day gets to break the tie? Because we can't, you don't want them duking that out. Do we pull the plug on mom? Do we not? If you've already told them what your wishes are, it's already documented. Which your kids or your friends is going to follow your wishes, And if it's written out, it also takes that pressure off of them, right? So there's less of that fighting, because they have something to look to. So you're not going to lose this relationship over like, well, I think mom would have wanted, and I think you're not going to have that fight. So I think it helps preserve those relationships that really matter. Like your family should be able to lean on each other at that point, not be having these conversations over, I was right, you were wrong. And I won't even get into the money side of it. That's just the feelings side.
Right.
Reamey, did you have anything you want to add to that?
I often tell folks, like, the most loving thing you can do for the folks you'll be leaving behind is write down your wishes if you can. At least have those really good conversations, but if you can write them down, that is even more helpful, because they're not going to be left second guessing themselves, their own decisions that were made in the moment. And it's truly just like showing them, like, this is the path, this is what you want, these are your values, these are your goals of care, and is really truly going to relieve such a burden further down the line. I have known folks who've been worried that they made the wrong choice for their dad 20 years ago. Wow. And no one wants to live with that.
Yeah.
And it just sits with them. Oh my goodness. All right, so I'm going to do a speed round question. Okay. And this is for everyone as well. So, there's humor and the hard truth together. We plan weddings for years on end, but we won't even spend one afternoon planning for death. What finally makes people take this seriously, and how do we normalize these conversations at the dinner table before the crisis, actually occurs? Yeah.
Can I go first?
Yeah.
Okay. So years and years ago, my girlfriends and I, we had wine night and advanced directives. And we all like just sat around. We had a couple bottles of wine and we just truly talked about like what we would and wouldn't want. And we were in our early 20s. And we had a really great conversation. And then that did normalize that conversation moving forward with my friend group. And we have had many times when we've been like, I've updated my advance directive. I just wanted you to know, you witnessed the last one. Can you witness this one as well?
Oh, that's perfect.
Yep.
That's really cool. I love that.
Right.
Carmen or Alex?
Hey, yeah, this is Alex. Unfortunately, I do find that most people realize it after they go through a traumatic experience with it, if that makes sense. And so I've had so many people tell me, well, my mom didn't have any of this squared away, so we're making sure that dad has it squared away, which is so unfortunate because I hate for people to have this negative experience to thrust them into doing, preparation for the next experience. And it's really, somebody mentioned earlier, death and taxes. It really is the one thing that, no one gets out of, right? Everybody experiences this, but we never talk about it. And so I just wish, people would have those conversations, even if we don't write it down, we just have it, and not have to go through all this turmoil to learn this lesson that we need to prepare,
Yeah.
This
All
is
right.
Carmen. I just have a quick
Yeah, go
I have
ahead.
a quick plug for theconversationproject.org. It has several games on there that people can use to have the conversation. There's a conversation guide. And if nothing else, this is a free resource that everybody can use to start that conversation and start the planning.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for that. And then we'll get that information to give to our listeners as well. But you all stay tuned because we will be right back for the Girl What podcast.
Well, welcome back to Girl What podcast. This is Esther, Jade, and we're talking about all things death. Look, we're going to normalize talking about death and how we do this. But for now, we're going to jump into the group chat got deep. And before you go, leave something behind with our 4 guests. So community truth-telling, vulnerability, and the collective wisdom that only surfaces when the room gets real enough to go there. So, Lo, what's the first question for our guests?
All right, so Black communities specifically, carry a cultural and generational silence around death. We plan the homegoing, but we don't plan for what comes after. Where does that silence come from, and what does it cost our families in real, tangible ways when we keep passing it down?
This is Carmen. One of the things that I thought about when I was thinking about this podcast is when I was very young, I can remember, I can't remember who it was, but at my grandmother's house, someone was in a casket in the dining room. People used to have home services. People would die at home, and we were always exposed to it. And when I was growing up, I don't think my parents ever said, oh, she's too young, let's not take her to a funeral. We were engaged with all of those things, but people don't do that anymore. And many times people do die in the hospital, and medicine and technology have gotten so wonderful that we always have hope that everybody's going to live forever, and so we don't think about it. And I think that's why it's so taboo, because nobody's having those conversations any longer.
You know what? I agree with you, Carmen. Coming from a family who has focused on homegoings, but like what I shared with everyone off the airwaves before we started was that my maternal grandparents actually planned for everything. From like they made sure all of their debts were clean, like clear. The houses were paid outright. And I remember before my grandfather died, he had told all his children what they were going to get, and it was the same thing in the will. But essentially, all they had to do were to call the mortician, and that was it. So they could grieve. They didn't have to worry about how things were getting paid. Like the funeral arrangements are already made. Of course, there were some people in afterwards who were trying to fight over stuff, but it's like, how are you doing that? That like, this is the will, this is what he wanted. And, even some of the best laid plans, it still emits chaos. It meant people who, I guess, want something after the person dies, which is crazy to me. So, thank you for, what do you think is a good way to, keep from passing this down, Carmen? Like how can we normalize it? Should we go back to having wakes inside of our homes? I think so, because it's getting expensive outside.
Carmen, can I butt
I
in?
think that's an option. I was just going to say, I certainly think that is an option, but the biggest thing is to start having those conversations from childhood. When my son was younger, I worked at hospice, and I remember we had a little booklet that looked like a cartoon, and I would go through and read it because I knew his grandmother was older and she wouldn't live forever, and I wanted him to be prepared, so we read through that. And those conversations need to start young when children are willing and able to listen, because as people get older, it's harder and harder.
And then Carmen, also with the book that you guys wrote, like you do have a lot of those questions or conversation starters in the back of the book as well. So I'll definitely make sure, of course, to, you know, get the information as to where people can purchase that. But then also, and of course you could tell me if I'm wrong, but, you know, Grandma pretty much had the same thing as well as what Esther was saying, you know, where she had everything already lined up for you all. So it wasn't something where you had to scramble and do a bunch of things. Because I remember she died on June 21st. Literally June 23rd, there was a wake. The 4th was the 24th. So, you know, it was a very quick turnaround.
That was part of that conversation as well, because I know some people like to hold funerals out longer. And I asked Mama, how soon do you want us to have the funeral? And she told me, and it happened. So when someone tells you that, you want to do everything you can to honor that person's wishes in whatever way possible.
And I mean, she had even planned out what she wanted to wear. So like it was very.
Oh, I have my songs that I want to play.
She.
I do.
But yeah, those. I mean,
So
again,
let's normalize that.
Yeah, for sure. That definitely is something that needs to be normalized.
So for Reamey, Carmen, and Alex, you all show up for people at the most sacred transition a human being makes. What has sitting with death taught you about how to actually live?
I love this question. This is Reamey. I love this question. I think that sitting with death has really taught me how to live. I think I am a happier person. I think I am a healthier person. I have a lot of respect for how I am spending other people's time as well as my own time. And I am faced with befriending my own mortality, which has been a really positive experience for me. But I love what end of life has taught me about living. So a lot of people say, "Oh my gosh, your job must be really depressing." And I always say, like, my job is bringing me such joy. I am happier and healthier and a better person and a better friend for what I am doing with folks out there at the bedside. And I cannot imagine doing this without this work. This is truly like what I feel like it's bringing me. It's filling my soul.
Yeah.
Alex or Carmen, what has sitting?
Alex.
Okay, go ahead, Alex.
Yeah, I was actually exactly what you said. So it's really taught me, sitting in these moments with my community that I live in, it's really taught me about what people think about at the end of life and what is really important to people. You know, I've never ever held somebody's hand and have them tell me they wish they would have worked more hours at work. You know, it's really showed me what is important to people, and it's also helped me treat others and be more present with others in a way that is super compassionate, and not just in my work, but I mean at the grocery store. If someone needs help getting out of their car, it's just shown me and taught me how to slow down a bit, because you can't rush those moments. It doesn't matter if you have another patient to go to or you've got to do something. Those moments are sacred, and it's taught me how to pause. It's also helped me be really comfortable having uncomfortable conversations because I'm able to guide those around me. And so whenever I get nervous or I feel like things are getting tense, I just remember that I'm there to lead them because, you know, this is my field and they're looking to me for guidance. And so it's just really helped me be comfortable in who I am and who I am to other people.
Thank you. Carmen, what has sitting with death taught you about how to actually live?
I ditto everything they've said. It has. I don't feel like I would be the same person had I not done work with death and dying. One of the things that I learned early on from many of my patients was, if there is anything you want to do it, you need to do it now. Because so many times people put things off until they retire or until a certain time. And in many cases, people retire and some illness sets in or something happens that they're not able to do it. So I've done a lot more of those things. And even as a parent, it has colored the way that I raised my child, because I saw so many parents who passed, or well, let me not say passed, who died before they their children grown. And so it made me realize that my job as a mother is to make sure my son can make it in this world. I'm not always going to be here. So it even changed the way I raised him.
Robin, generational wealth is a conversation Black families are finally having out loud. Estate planning sits at the center of that conversation. What do you want our listeners to walk away understanding about what a will, a trust, or a power of attorney actually protects for the next generation?
Yeah, that's huge, because your earlier question where you said, like, what does not having this conversation cost us? Wealth, that hands down. Because if you pass without, like, a trust is so big. There's tax assets that are like protections and just so many things available to you as the person who receives those benefits and everything. And if you're not having the conversation early, you're completely missing out on all of those benefits associated with it. So there's, like, if without planning, you're going to lose so much money to even things like having to do a bond if you end up dying without a will. Like, now this person has to go put money up, and you're losing money to taxes, even administrative time. They're running around chasing people, right? And this is time where the meter is running, essentially. Right. So if you can have those conversations early, figure out what is the best place to store that. How do I do this? Talk to a tax planner, talk to an attorney. And it's honestly a very reasonable cost to set this stuff up for some really huge long-term gains. So I think that's one of those, the earlier you have the conversation, the more you can do about that and set things up. Right. And, if you have kids, great. Talk about life insurance policies. What does that need to look like? Where does that go? And if you don't have kids, how do I spend some of this down? I know I'm probably going to end up on Medicaid or Medicare. How can I spend some of this down so I'm not trying to give someone a bunch of cash that's been taken by by taxes and healthcare. Yeah. There's ways to protect these things. So the earlier you have the conversation, the better, I think.
And then also, again, just kind of going back, having that conversation as early as you're able to also allows your family to grieve properly without having to have that additional stress on them. That's right. That's something that a lot of people don't realize. It's just like, you get so caught up with having to make sure everything is in order, and then it's like you can't properly grieve. Correct. Because it's like, I'm stressed.
Well, I've worked with so many families that have been, I get the people who we're doing this now because mom passed away unexpectedly. We know dad isn't going to last that much longer, and we don't want to go through that again. Right. And they're grieving mom twice as long as dad because it was such a shock, and they had to do so much work around it, and it was so hard. I've got people who, the husband suddenly passes away, and he was the head of the household. He arranged everything to the point where, like, living situations become questionable, and now the entire game has completely changed. And if there had been conversations about this right along and everybody was on the documentation or whatever, and this is that whole, like, ounce of prevention. It can go such a long way. And it seems hard to do up front. Like, who wants to go pay a lawyer to, draw up a will or a trust or whatever? But it's really, for long-term planning, it's so worth it. Yeah. It's so worth it.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So we have a community participation moment. So we want to hear from our listeners right now. Drop it in the comments, send it to the group chat, whatever you do it for us. Okay. Just let us know. Did your family ever talk about death, money, and what happens after? And if they didn't, what do you wish somebody had told you out loud sooner? Because somebody in this community needs to hear that they are not alone in figuring this out. Yeah. So definitely make sure, you all know how to reach us, and it'll be at the end of the podcast as well. Definitely we want to hear from you because, we like the interaction. These types of things are important. As we've mentioned the entire podcast show today, it's important to have these conversations. So even if, you've listened to this and you send a group chat to your family and say, hey, this isn't something that we've done before, but after listening to this podcast, I think this is something that we really do need to take the time to sit down and do. Yeah. Even as Reamey said, do wills and wine, something like that. Like we love a good, theme or something. So turn it into something that doesn't have to be so dreadful or the thought of it isn't a dreadful thing, because again, this is something that will help everyone involved in the long run, even though it might seem like it's, a down type of thing. But again, it's there to help everybody that'll be involved. So definitely want to do that. And so, Esther, do you want to? Were you about to say something else?
Yeah, I was going to say, can I get Carmen to tell everybody where they can find her on the interwebs if they're interested in her services? And then we're going to go to Alex and then everybody else.
Okay. I have Instagram is Glorious Transitions Doula, and my website will be glorioustransitionsdoulacare.com.
Alex, how can everyone find you?
So everybody can find me a couple ways. So it's really, truly, I mean, my company website is acghospice.com. And I am also on Instagram, Alexandra Saferno, and that's the full name. And so you can find me there as well.
Reamey?
You can Google me. It's Reamey Belski. I'm on Instagram as deathdoulalife_RVA, and my website is crossoverdoulaservices.com.
And last but not least, Esquire.
Your favorite word of
Yeah,
I like it. I deleted it, I think, when I was emailing you back. So basically, if you search Red Quill Law, we've got Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, all the things. Robin Frost, redquilllaw.com is the website. There are 3 L's in a row, though. I failed on that. So it's Red Quill, QUILL.
I like it,
law
though.
afterwards. It's a little weird. Yeah, a little. Let's
Get
keep
the Eartha
version.
kit on.
Yeah.
And that leads us into That's It. So we first up was What's the Tea, Sis? We did Nobody Told Us This Part. It was the unfiltered, unapologetic introduction to what death actually costs the living, financially, legally, and emotionally. And then we went into Love, Baby, and Other Grown Folks Business, What We Owe Each Other, where we talked real talk about how death lands inside relationships, parenting, and the beautiful, complicated business of being a grown woman holding everybody together. And for our final, the group chat got deep. It was Before You Go, Leave Something Behind. So this was a community truth-telling, vulnerability, and the collective wisdom that only surfaces when the room gets real enough to go there. Yeah. So, yes, this has been a wonderful Saturday, hasn't it, Lou?
It has been. I don't know if you heard me. Sorry. Like my voice cracked. It has been. I thank y'all so much. Again, ladies, you all have been
thank you
wonderful
everyone for coming on.
For giving your perspective. And I mean, and it was a collective perspective clearly. So, definitely we're going to continue beating it into our listeners' heads that death is something that needs to be discussed more often, and people need to get comfortable with speaking about death, the planning and everything around it. But it's time for us to go, y'all. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Bye.
Bye. Stay connected to Girl What podcast by following us online. You can follow us on Instagram and YouTube at Girl What Podcast. That's GURLWHET We'd love to keep in touch with you. Come on, keep talking with us. That's what we do, right? Mm-hmm. So we have our, reflections. If you have any questions, comments, or you yourself want to reflect on anything you've heard us talk about, please don't be afraid to hit us up. Again, you can hit us up in our DMs on Instagram, or if you want to comment under one of our YouTube posts, you're more than welcome to do so. Again, both of those handles are Girl What Podcast, GURLWHET PODCAST.
And you also have the option to leave us a voice memo in our DMs or leave us a voice message at 804-476-0905. Again, that number is 804-476-0905. And with your permission, we may feature it in a future episode. Your voice helps us shape meaningful dialogue on Girl What. So remember to stay in community. Remember to stay bold. And girl, keep talking.